Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's video, we're talking about the sports card market. Is it bouncing back? Was it ever really dead? We're going to be discussing the increase in prices that we are seeing across baseball cards in particular and other categories as well. Baseball injuries. Spring is here. We're seeing players get hurt. It's always a shame. We saw Garrett Cole just go down to something, getting an MRI. Aaron Judge isn't playing every day. We'll also talk about Manny Machado, Corey Seager, and others. So let's talk about who's here. My name is Scott. We also have Ty, Chris, and Phil. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And let's just start this off. Teapot, is the sports card market rebounding? I know you have some graphs you might want to show.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up some information from Market Movers, and I think it is. In general, I think the sports card market is rebounding. I think baseball is doing really well right now. All right. So you should be seeing Market Movers is our Market Pulse feature. And what I've done is I've pulled up 4 different indexes. The first is our newly recalibrated SCI 500. So this is basically your kind of baseline, your market baseline. This is 500 cards, iconic cards, all eras, most important ones from as recently as the last few years, all the way back to vintage. So this is generally a good overall indicator of the sports card market in general. And I'm looking at the last 90 days. And over the last 90 days, this is actually up 2.3%. If any of you ever watch the weekly top 5 videos that Jeff usually does, sometimes I do them, you'll see that we cover these indexes weekly. And I can tell you pretty much all of last year, it was just every week. Yep, the SCF 500 is down another 0.3%, another 1%, another however many percent. And it's finally trending back upwards, which is, I think, encouraging. To me, that just tells me things have kind of chilled out a little bit. But then if you look into these other specific indexes, we've got some things kind of broken out by different years. In 2020 to 2020, this is obviously when we started to see a lot more boom in the hobby. That index is pretty much flat last 90. 2010 to 17 is up 8.6%, which is really strong considering last year. And then 2000 to 2009 is up big, 22%. However, that has a lot to do with this card in particular, this Clayton Kershaw, which sold for the first time in a long time, having sold back in 2020 for $928, and it recently sold for $3.3K. So that one kind of pushed that one. But in general, baseball card prices have been going up. A lot of players up. Not uncommon for this time of year, obviously, to see some momentum behind card prices in general. So we'll see what happens from April to July. But I'd say in general, it's up after having been steadily down for sure over the last 2.5, 3 years.
Perfect. Phil, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that seems to be consistent with some of the other narrative that I've been hearing. Ken Golden, whether it's been 1 month or 2 consecutive months of really strong sales, he's noted. And other guys from Card Ladder with their CL50 index had similar observations that Teapot shared. With their index, you're looking at 50 cards, various grades, various genres, various sports. And some of those don't price all too often. So you could run the risk of stale data. You could run the risk of one card, high sale. It's really dominating that price movement. So even adjusting for, I think it was like a Willie Mays card that was like extraordinarily high, maybe high eye appeal, whatever, the way it is with vintage. Not every card's the same. But they had noted that it was the first month that the CL50 was up in at least a year, maybe longer. Yeah. So I've heard good stuff about that. I've heard pretty good stuff about transaction volumes from folks that are kind of tracking this stuff anecdotally. But, sometimes it's tough for at least 3 of us here that are buried in baseball. It's like we usually see a turnaround at this point. Granted, We're looking at modern baseball for the most part, not really vintage baseball as much. And it always seems like things are ticking up. Also, you have tax refunds that, are coming up right about now. But I think based on everything I'm hearing, it's more likely than not that it's more than just a cyclical thing that we see once a year with seasonality with the sports kind of coming back.
Okay, Chris, do you have any different thoughts?
No, I was going to say when Phil was mentioning some anecdotal evidence, and that's certainly my department. There's a couple cards I've been sort of tracking, like for example, the Soto Hands on Hips. That card had dipped very briefly under $400, like in the fall, and the last couple sales I'm seeing, it's now steadily over $600. So the Soto market is definitely on the way up for those of us who are interested, not interested. And I've personally I listed a couple Guerreros for sale, both on Facebook and on eBay, and they both got scooped up pretty quick. So I was kind of surprised. The Guerrero market is definitely ticking up. I think people saw the workout videos and the skinniness, the skinnierness, we'll say. But yeah, I mean, it's spring training. Baseball's back. And not everyone is just buying prospects, Phil, but some of us are looking at some of established players that look like they're in pretty good shape this spring and doing well. I've also noticed the SSP market seems to be especially strong. I kind of hate myself for potentially being a partial reason for that.
Yeah, you've killed that market, you and Jeff. You guys have made that market go nuts.
Yeah, well, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess. But yeah, some of these big name players, definitely things are. I think the hobby in general is ticking in the right direction.
How come you talking about short prints made them go up, but me talking about Billy Butler didn't do anything? What's the deal?
I can't answer that without being really mean, so I'm just not going to say anything.
Well, I think maybe you sharing Lindor on Instagram maybe helped his market, Scott. Yeah. Because by the time your video came out, like, oh, he's a good buy, like his prices were already up like 2x. Right?
He has gone up. But I can't believe that's all. Like, he's been in like a ton of articles, right?
True. We've talked about him a lot on the show too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We have. One thing I'll say, let's talk about this. So the market, right? We're talking about the market. We had a very poor end to 2023 in baseball. Obviously, for the Rangers and the D-backs, it was great. They made the World Series, but it wasn't a very watched World Series. The playoffs, the big teams kind of got knocked out. The Yankees didn't make it. I think we saw a very dramatic offseason of we're just being really cold. And so I think we're seeing now a really big feeling spike in baseball because of that, right? People are really excited again. There's hope going into the season. Plus, there's a lot of other things like, things are going well relatively in the economy, slightly better as well, which helps people like Phil said have more money to spend. I do just think it is cyclical, but at the same time, I don't pay attention to anything but baseball. Like I don't pay attention to football. I don't really pay attention to basketball. At least cards. I pay attention to the sport, but not the cards. I don't have any interest. But I do feel like it just feels cyclical to me. We just had some very interesting situations with players like Juan Soto going to the Yankees that people are going nuts over. And that's really made all cards seem like they're going way up. And there's other situations similar to that for me where I wouldn't say like the hobby's booming again, but I never really thought it was that dead either. Yeah, it's slowing down, but at the end of the day, it's never going to be, at least not for a while, what it was when it was really booming. So I feel like it's just cyclical, but that's just my thoughts without doing any in-depth research. So.
I was going to say in 2020, 2021, people started to make the connection between cryptocurrency and sports cards.
I was going to say that too.
Are correlated. So year to date, what is Bitcoin up like 70% from like 40K to 70K or something?
Yeah.
Obviously we haven't seen that massive run up. And I know others that track TCG are saying like, well, it feels different. It's good. Like the market's healthy, but clearly like most genres of TCG or of sports of baseball aren't up that much. Another part of the market that I see, and maybe Teapot has some insight into this too, is I know we're mostly concerned with like singles prices when we're talking about like rebounding, because that's more sexy for all of us, of course, and for most of the folks watching. But the wax market, like my customers, I sell a repackaged product, and the demand for wax seems to be up. I'm noticing fewer people canceling. Also noticing fewer people canceling because of financial, issues or constraints there. And I am noticing a pretty big tick up in demand. And I can't tell if that's because I've changed my model a little bit. Now I'm making one-time purchases available throughout the whole month instead of just making available on the 15th. But I think there's something about either the economic environment or the sports card market that is boding well for, my business right now.
Yeah, I mean, stock market's up. S&P keeps going up. I know there's kind of a lot of layoffs happening for a lot of people right now in certain sectors, especially tech and other things. But in general, I mean, I can tell you, there's a ton of enthusiasm. I'm here like in Cards HQ, and that's where I am tonight. And there's a lot of wax moving. I mean, these guys just can't keep stuff stocked. And there's a lot of people who are enjoying it, whether buying into breaks or opening the packs. But then SGC for the first time came out and said that they've got a backlog. It seems like there's just a lot. There's a lot going on. We're seeing our sales volume and numbers in our, in our stats are up right now for this first quarter. And generally first quarter, again, not just baseball cards, but in general, between football up to the Super Bowl and then the continuation with baseball, we see it pretty hot this time of year. It'll start to cool off by the end of this month usually. So that's when I'm really keeping my eyes on it. But this year's been particularly good compared to I would say the last 2 years.
Yeah, and Phil, I know you mentioned just barely, right, being correlated to crypto. It's interesting. Obviously, Bitcoin, the ETF passed earlier this year, and plus there's a halving event next month. So all those things are boosting the price. So is it correlated? I know Bitcoin to other crypto, yes, but to cards, it's tough. I don't know if those can impact it. Interest rates are dropping, and they're predicted to continue to fall, which maybe helps a little bit. But at the end of the day, I would love to know in the long run how correlated these markets are, right? If we could look back 20 years from now. But
but Bitcoin, it's like how much of the price is due to the ETF and the halving event coming up versus just like overall kind of like blind optimism in the market.
But yeah, so market, it's good though. It's good. I like what you said, Ty. There's a chance that if Juan Soto or anyone slows down in April, which is typical for some players, that's more the time to buy. But there's a lot of FOMO right now. And so if you aren't buying right now, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Maybe sell a little bit and save that money. So, okay. Any final thoughts on the sports market rebounding that you want to discuss?
I had a follow-up question for Teapot about your store. You said wax is moving. Are you seeing, when you say like wax is moving, is it current, like the stuff that's just come out, like 2024 Series 1 Stadium Club, or is it more older stuff?
Everything's moving, all of it. But I mean, for sure, new stuff. People are coming in for new stuff. And, what's really cool is you've obviously got like whales who come in and they want to rip a lot and they buy cases, or they just want to buy a ton.
Don't fat shame your customers, Teapot. That's not very nice.
What'd you say?
I said, don't fat shame your customers.
Fat wallets.
Okay.
And then, but there's a lot of people, like people have been commenting and they're like, they'll see the shop in the background from the videos we're doing. They're like, oh, it doesn't look very busy. And I'm like, well, there's 9,000 square feet of show floor. And, that's the first thing. So even if you have 50 people, it doesn't look busy, but there's so much foot traffic throughout the day of like moms or dads coming in and they're buying a Series 1 hobby box, taking it home, like for their kids and stuff. So I think generally things are buzzing and very hot. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of a lull. It's back on the uptick right now.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome. Okay. Well, the next thing I wanted to discuss with you all are baseball players and the injuries that they're having. We have a few. We have Ronald Acuna Jr., who has not played for a while because he had some knee swelling. Is that what it was, Chris? Knee swelling?
They call it irritation.
Okay.
It is for those of you watching, it is Monday night on March 11th. He has taken batting practice for 3 straight days. Even when he got back from his doctor, he said he felt ready to play. They're obviously going to baby him. We've got about 2+ weeks until opening day, so they're not going to rush him in there. But from everything I've read, and I've read a ton on this topic, he seems like he's going to be fine and good to go.
Cool. Good to know. We'll discuss him in a minute because maybe I'm feeling a little bit more contrarian than you on that one. But then we also have Garrett Cole today. Again, Monday at 9:40 p.m. He had an MRI, or he's getting an MRI. We haven't heard the results yet, and that's always a cause for concern. Aaron Judge is not playing because of some spring soreness. Is that what it was, Chris, that they said it was? Then Manny Machado hasn't really played yet. Corey Seager had that hernia. So which of these players, are there any players that you are concerned about and any players you aren't concerned about? Chris, you just mentioned that you aren't concerned about Acuna. Who are you concerned about?
I'm extremely concerned about any pitcher that has any sort of elbow discomfort, even in March. Like, it's so early, and Garrett Cole is such an absolute workhorse of a person. For him to have a hard time recovering, which is what I understand. Like, I guess he said, he's throwing 45 pitches, and it feels like for the next 3 days, it feels like he threw 120. Like, that's not great. That doesn't sound like, a tear or anything, but it just doesn't sound good. Like, he is in his 30s. He is throwing a ton of innings. It just makes you worried. So Garrett Cole concerns me. And also the fact that Jeff and I have talked about Garrett Cole, as I said before, like, we tend to be really bad luck for players. But irrelevant to that, I do get concerned anytime a pitcher talks about his elbow just not feeling right. Even if it's something simple, it's worrisome.
Yeah, I agree. Phil, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm also worried about Garrett Cole. Well, I'm a Red Sox fan, and I don't own any of his cards, so I'm only, how worried can I really be? But has he had a Tommy John before? I don't think he has.
I don't think he has.
To get to your 30s without a Tommy John, it's probably his time. It's okay. Unfortunately, it means he's going to miss pretty much close to 2 full seasons, because this is usually a 17 or 18-month recovery, which is too bad. If this happens, I don't know if this is going to happen, and maybe he'll go with that braces alternative and miss a little bit less time. I don't know how that works with pitchers. I think that's what Jason Dominguez is going through right now, and Ohtani went through it as well. But yeah, with Garrett Cole, his velocity was down a tick last year, but it was really in line with like his 3 or 5 year average. His K/9 I noticed was like 9.5 last year. So was he? That's probably more of a symptom of him learning to pitch, I'm guessing, with less spin, without the sticky stuff, more than it was him being injured. But yeah, you look at Garrett Cole as a workhorse. You think if a guy's going to go down, it's going to be somebody like Strider, somebody who he's built really well, but maybe he's not as tall. I don't want to take that away from him. Still very nice physique. Somebody like, I don't know, Hunter Green, somebody that throws harder than Garrett Cole that doesn't quite have the frame to back that up. Somebody maybe younger, somebody that's throwing at max. And there's certainly a lot of guys out there that can throw faster and harder than Garrett Cole. But at the end of the day, a pitcher is still a pitcher, guys. And this happens. And, it's right now, again, Chris said it's March 11th. It's Monday. I'm sure there's going to be more news that comes out in the next few days. But, yeah, that's too bad if that's the case.
So Garrett Cole, I want to look at his baseball reference page really fast. Let's decide where we think he's at in his career, assuming he has Tommy John and assuming he misses 1.5 seasons, okay? So this last year, he won the Cy Young, had an amazing year, right? Amazing year at age 32. So if he's hurt, he's entering his age 33 season, halfway through age 34, okay? So it's getting pretty old. Right now, he's sitting at 2,152 strikeouts, 2,152 strikeouts. If he would have pitched this year, racked up another 200 at least, he'd have been at almost 2,400, okay? So he was close to 3,000 strikeouts. But if he has this Tommy John, I'm not confident that he would have enough innings or just be the same guy to get to the 3,000 strikeout mark, which he really needs, because if we go look at the top again, he only has 41.2 career WAR, and you can hate WAR, and that's totally fine, but it's not like he has 200 wins yet. It's not like he has, like, his career ERA is very low at 3.17, but there's a lot of things where I don't think he's a Hall of Famer without this year, another elite season this year. And that is concerning for Garrett Cole collectors, because I've seen a lot of Garrett Cole people, like a lot of people buy Garrett Cole with the understanding, like, yeah, because of this last year, he's there, right? That's what I've seen a lot of. So this is like a kick to the nuts, if I'm being honest, for a lot of people, and for good reason. Because if he could have just replicated one of the last 2 seasons where he had, where are we? This obviously 2022 wasn't great, but 7.4, 5.7 WAR again, then we're talking about Hall of Fame caliber. But that'll be tough when you come back from Tommy John at age 34 and 35, if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. Obviously, he's going to need that or not. And yeah, I'm right there. I mean, I was all in on Garrett Cole, like starting about, in December. I thought he looked like a great buy. So it does hurt. I do feel this in my nuts, Scott. You're damn right. I do want to point out, though, he has just had 6. Did I see 6 top 5 Cy Young finishes already in his career? Yeah. So anyone out there who would say Garrett Cole does not belong, couldn't get in the Hall of Fame with his resume now, you damn well better not be telling me Billy Wagner belongs in the Hall of Fame.
You have a weird bias against relievers.
You just hate Billy Wagner.
You and Jeff are so weird with relievers,
so
because obviously Billy Wagner and Garrett Cole have very different resumes. That's like,
yeah, one of them is really impressive. The other guy throws hard 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah. All of us are. You are so dramatic in that bottom little tile.
So anti-reliever.
I was on board with everything you said, then you brought that up, and I was like, oh, everything Chris said out
there. Here we go. Billy Wagner.
I just felt like I'd drop a wrecking ball into the conversation.
Am I talking to Chris? Am I talking to my dad? Holy hell.
Yeah. The video thumbnail for this is just going to be Billy Wagner sucks. Just a big picture.
We should just have Chris yelling at the clouds.
That's what I said. Me and Abraham Simpson. I'm just like,
that's funny. Scott, you hit on something like, when I think about like the players this season, I mean, look, there's a lot of guys right now who are out, and you're talking about Hall of Famers, and we're talking about pitchers, right? So then, like, to continue the conversation, we've got Verlander coming off injury, we've got Scherzer who's going to miss I don't know how long, a ton of time. Those are the and you brought this up recently, Chris, DeGrom, and then Kershaw coming back to pitch. He's been so good. I'm just like,
Kershaw will half the season too. Ty, sorry to cut you off. He'll miss half the season.
Oh, Kershaw is going to miss half the season?
Yeah, he's recovering from a surgery he had this offseason. He'll be back in like June or July.
Somehow I missed that. So there you go. So, that's the pitchers. It's like all these, Hall of Fame caliber pitchers are missing time. We're seeing this evolution now of 5 to 6 innings, 7 if you're lucky from starters. I don't know. That's a whole different thing. But then on the hitting side, like there's 2 groups of people that I don't want to see get hurt. One is those fringe Hall of Famers. So when I start looking at, like, I don't want to see Paul Goldschmidt get injured, even though I'm not looking at him like expecting a huge season like 2 years ago. I want to see him play a full season. I want to see Freddie Freeman play a full season. I want to see those guys who are on that trajectory, have a full season. But then, I mean, I just got to think about the young guys. Like obviously Ohtani had a surgery. We got Jason Dominguez, who's been a big name, who's, hopefully going to come back sooner than later, but we were talking about him earlier. And then, Acuna just selfishly being here in Atlanta and wanting to go to a lot of Braves games and root for them. I'm concerned from a card perspective anytime the big young names start going down, start dropping like flies. That's just not good for cards in general, because I think there's a ripple effect. People just start getting frustrated. Oh, I just sunk, 1,000, 2,000, 200, whatever the amount of money is to some player, and then they get hurt for months or the season. That can add up really quickly. And we've had some seasons like that, not only in baseball, but in other sports too.
Yeah. So I do want to say I am a little bit concerned about Acuna, not because I think this knee injury is going to end his season. I would be shocked if he wasn't on the opening day roster, but having consistent knee soreness throughout the entire year, if that's the case, if he can't get over it, lingering issues, especially in a knee for a speedster like him, can be brutal for your overall numbers and the way you feel, even your swing. We saw DJ LeMahieu. This could be paired with age, of course, right? He broke his toe, came back from it, not 100%, but then he's never been the same guy. And he kind of mentioned it's because he can't shift his weight quite the same way he wants to. And that's concerning for someone with a hurt knee. And so I think he'll be fine, but I do agree, Ty. I was actually, I don't want to say that. Okay, I'll say it. There was a card I was looking to buy of Acuna, and I was like, I'm going to wait and see. Like, it's not going anywhere. No one's going to buy it. I'm going to wait and see because I don't want to pay for this. He's just still a little bit sore 2 weeks into the season. Oh, yeah, he'll be, you know what I'm saying? Like, you never know with these managers who protect their star players in the media. And it's good they do that, but tough for fans to.
Yeah. Well, then you've got a guy like, too, there's like some other fringe players, too, just who are on that milestone potential, like Giancarlo Stanton. He's at 402 home runs, and he's 34 years old. He can't seem to play a full season. Like, I like rooting for those guys to hit those, hit that 500 home run milestone. I think he's now the active home run leader. So, I just think about so many injuries just suck. I hate injuries, and it's so frustrating in general as a fan, as a fantasy player, as a card collector. I hope we don't see any of those key guys go down, but we've already seen a few of them get hurt this year.
Yeah, like at least give us one full season of Byron Buxton.
Please.
Now the prime might be over, but he's looking good right now, I heard.
Or Royce Lewis, the next Byron Buxton.
Yeah, exactly. Like with Giancarlo now, it's great from a cumulative perspective, but the single season, I mean, it's not going to be that sexy if he stays healthy. But yeah, I mean, Acuna, I am guilty. I did sell one of his cards probably at like when the news was at its worst, or it wasn't even news. It was just like, speculation, as Chris corrected us. When we're all like going down that hole, he's like, guys, it's nothing yet. We don't know for sure. It's just some dude from Twitter who's a doctor that hasn't even seen his leg. But anyways, I sold a lesser card of Acuna. It was a pajama card, and I ended up selling it for what I paid back in like November, basically. So I'm fine with that. I mean, like Scott said, this persistent knee pain, we don't know how bad it's going to be. We know that the knee recovery really sapped his power in 2022, sort of a lost season, right? This is obviously very different, although it's the same knee. So we're going to expect some regular regression with Acuna. I think the projection systems have him between like 50 to 60 steals. So even if you lose 20, you're still like in that range of that, regular regression that's baked into the projection systems. What he did last year was just so crazy that, regression is just normal for that sort of like outlier season.
One of the best power speed seasons ever, if not the best.
Yeah. This is a reminder, though, that if you really think about it, like how many 5-tool players are there that have stayed healthy throughout their career? There's not many. And I think it's more of the exception than the norm for a guy like even Trout, who stayed pretty healthy for his first like 8 seasons or so. Like a lot of these guys they just can't make it because of their style of play. They just do too much. One of the nice things about Juan Soto, I mean, like the chances of him getting injured versus Acuna, it's got to be like exponentially different.
Soto's because he's going to make a stupid play in the outfield diving for a
You say that now. Yeah, you say
he didn't
that
miss
now.
a game last year. He's on a now contract year. He's not going to miss a game again.
I don't think he's making any crazy dives either in his contract year. He's thinking about the dollar signs.
Pull the Bryce Harper and just never dive. Have your worst defensive season. That's what Harper did before he signed with the Phillies. But Phil, you mentioned true 5-tool players that can stay healthy for 20 years. The one that pops to the front of my mind because he's the best baseball player of all time, in my opinion, is Willie Mays. Yeah. Right? Mays is the example of what Trout could have been if he stayed healthy his whole career, but he didn't. And so that's the tough thing is you can always we were projecting Mike Trout against all these all-time greats. You can do it on Fangraphs. It's a lot of fun, actually. And we can see actually Trout's ahead of every single one, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, all these people. And then kind of like Ken Griffey Jr., he hit age 30 and it's just flat the rest of his career. Kind of like Albert Pujols, they kind of hit a ceiling. And it's very rare they can continue to slowly increase. And so at times it can be tough, right? Buying into hype. If you'd have told us that 4 years ago, Mike Trout won MVP, it'd be kind of hard to believe that he's where he's at now 3 years later. So,
wait, I know a 5-tool guy that stayed healthy.
Who?
Barry Bonds.
I wonder why he stayed healthy. Any ideas?
Healthy.
But okay, any other players we want to discuss? I know we've talked about Manny Machado, Corey Seager. Corey Seager had a hernia. The only thing that might hurt him now is he's going to miss either a few games at the beginning of the year or just needs some at-bats to get it, the spring training 50 at-bats a player would like. So maybe he has a slow start, but that's about it. Manny Machado. Phil, you were talking about Machado. I don't know much about him. At least one of you was.
Yeah, I just heard an update that he's still not throwing, so he might be a little bit behind in his rehab. So he might be playing a decent amount of DH earlier in the season because of that. I don't know if Chris, you have anything else.
Yeah, he had. If you're unaware, he had a really just a horrific case of tennis elbow. What they were calling it. If you have never experienced this, it is it's an impossible amount of pain in such a tiny little spot, on the kind of the outside of your forearm. And I've had it before, and making a fist hurts to the point of it shocks you with pain. So I don't know how this guy was going up to the plate in August and September and holding the bat. And he hit I think he still hit 30 home runs last year. But the amount of pain he must have been in is extraordinary to then need surgery, because most people do not need surgery for a tennis elbow injury. Yeah. So I think we should take a minute, and people that hate Manny Machado should at least appreciate that he did everything he could for that team last year. He was playing through something horrific, and he posted up as best he could.
He still had a 115 OPS plus, 782. OPS is kind of ugly, but 30 home runs is good. Hit 258, kind of ugly. But we can always compare him to Arenado. You can't help it. I'm not going to compare them. He was also hurt last year. He had a very similar season. He had back issues the entire year before he went on the IL at the very end of the season. So it'd be great, like Ty said, to have these players healthy, because baseball is more fun when good players are good. So
we want to see
this. Lost Lucas Giolito, so it's
what's that, Ty?
So we already lost Lucas Giolito, right? So the season's off to a rough start.
Oh, what a loss! He was supposed to be our ace.
Right? That takes the Red Sox down from 102 wins down to 65 on the projections.
Yeah. Indeed.
I may have had the first number wrong.
You're going to be real close to the Rockies, Phil. It's going to be fun this year for us.
I just want to throw out another name that we briefly talked about. So Aaron Judge is dealing with some spring soreness.
Yeah.
I would just like to be on the record if he gets hurt again, and again, he's already said his toe is going to require management for the rest of his career. If he gets hurt again and they're putting him in center field when they have Trent Grisham on the roster, it will have to go down as one of the stupidest managerial moves in modern baseball history. He's just I don't understand why he doesn't play right field at home and DH on the road. He's too important in the box for it to matter where he plays in the field.
There's very few DHs that are that valuable, and he's that valuable.
Yeah.
Like Frank Thomas level.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get it. I don't understand why they aren't protecting both him, his career, and their own investment in him a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, now that Garrett Cole's hurt, maybe they'll rethink things. If Cole is, if he's out for a prolonged time. I think they're praying for Dominguez to get back ASAP to play some center field.
But, I mean, Grisham is a stud out there. He catches everything. You're not going to hit much, but I mean, he catches everything.
I agree with you. And like realistically, they could definitely play a lot of games with Grissom and oh my gosh, Verdugo. It's not like none of those guys are amazing bats. And so just get out there and
Just
get
catch the
Aaron
ball.
Judge off his feet, get Juan Soto in left field so he doesn't just hide him over there a little bit. And I don't know. Does it make sense?
It just the only thing people keep telling me, well, they've got Stanton. They need to get Stanton at bats. Like you do not have to get Stanton at bats.
No,
like,
move
write it
on.
off. Just yeah.
Get the best team on the field. Stanton's not the best player right now. Yes, he has really beautiful, like majestic home runs, but so did Chris Davis. So,
Indeed.
anyways, there's one player I do want to talk about, Michael Nelson Trout. I'm really hoping he can stay healthy because there's a real world where Trout wins the MVP this year. He's 32. There's a real world where he is on the Angels. Maybe the Ohtani pressure got to him. Felt like he had to perform in Ohtani's walk here. He was pressing at the plate. He's going to get walked a whole bunch now. His on base is going to go way up because there's no one that good behind him. The Angels are going to be bad. Like there's a real world where Trout has a big season this year. I saw him stealing some bases in spring training, which we have not seen Trout do. And so if they just say, hey, go play, Mike, go have fun, then it could be some big numbers from Daddy Trout.
No thanks. He'll be injured in April instead of May if that's the case.
I think that real world is somewhere else in the multiverse. And
I love the guy. I just wish he could stay healthy. You know?
Oh, yeah. Another guy that's great for baseball if he stays healthy. Kind of, even though his team won't be in the playoffs. But
Rod's plus 2,000, plus 2,200 right now.
Oh, he is?
Yeah. J-Rod's
Okay.
plus 1,000.
Yeah.
So
he's got the same chance of winning MVP as like Nolan Arenado in the NL, or who's around plus Kyle Tucker.
But like compare
that's
Trout's ceiling
like,
versus Nolan Arenado's ceiling. It's night and day. No offense to Arenado. I love him and I collect him, but
Right.
Gunner's also plus 2,000.
hey, but Gunner's hurt too. We haven't talked about him yet. Have we heard anything about Gunner and his oblique?
No, I'm not worried
Has
about
he
it.
played yet at all?
I don't know if he's played.
Probably not.
Colton Cowser's done great for
Yeah, he has.
them. So is Jackson Holiday.
Yeah, I would say that. Like, I feel like the Angels management and should tell Trout maybe we don't need to steal bases in spring training. Just like the Brian Snitker should have pulled Acuna aside and been like, next time you're in a rundown in spring training, you just walk off the field.
Just stop. Yeah.
Just sit in the dugout. Just go right in the dugout and sit down. Like it does not matter. Do not do that.
So
Just
Henderson
walk.
is playing.
Plays
He had an
his first
RBI
game a
double.
week ago. Yeah.
You see that? Yeah. So that's great news.
Yeah. Maybe the oblique was very mild and they shut him down because it was very mild in spring training.
I know, Matt McClain also made his spring training debut. He was dealing with a light oblique issue as well. Fantasy players out there. He says he's going to be fine.
So I've got to see Matt McClain and a lot of the Reds players play since I live close to Cincinnati. Some of them look like they're the real deal. Matt McClain looked awesome. He looked awesome out there. So speaking of, one more thing we should talk about is Noelvi Marte. He is suspended for steroids, which sucks for Noelvi Marte collectors, especially because that hurts the Reds' depth in the infield. That's like their biggest thing they had. They could trade off of that for pitching. And now it's a little bit hard to see. But it is only 80 games, so he'll be back mid-season, right? So that'll be good. July, he'll have the season to go. He's only 22. But it just, again, reminds you of the realities of investing in sports cards, that these guys can kill our values because they're trying to secure a bag in the big leagues. It's tough. Okay, well, thank you for listening. Next episode, we're talking about the players that we believe are going to be good for each individual team. So we won't be just talking about the big guys. We'll be talking about the Rockies, which will be fun. We'll talk about the Marlins, everybody in between. So thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you don't already, and we'll see you in the next video.